Cole wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the notice on his screen. The words were simple enough. Auction, Lot 7734, abandoned maintenance hangar. Starting bid, 800 credits. Contents listed as miscellaneous salvage. 800 credits was nothing. Had spent more than that on replacement parts last month. But something about the listing made him pause. The location was deep in the lower decks of Reach, a part of the station that most people had forgotten existed. The previous owner was listed as unknown. That was strange. The Galactic Reclamation Bureau usually knew everything about everything. Had lived on Reach for 15 years. He ran a small repair shop on the middle decks, fixing ships for traders and miners who passed through. Business was slow. The big corporate repair stations had fancy equipment and alien technology that made his old tools look like toys, but kept working. His father had been a mechanic. His grandfather, too. The Cole family had been fixing machines for 200 years, going all the way back to Earth. He looked at the auction listing again. Nobody else had bid. The auction had been open for 3 weeks and not a single person wanted it. Asked around. The answers he got were strange. The aliens on the station refused to talk about Lot 7734. A merchant made a holy sign and walked away. A cargo handler actually hissed at him. Even the humans on the station seemed nervous. "That place is cursed," said Old Tom, a retired pilot who drank at the bar near shop. 3 owners in the last 50 years, all dead. Strange accidents, equipment failures. One of them just disappeared. They found his shoes outside the door but never found him. Should have walked away. Any smart person would have. But he kept thinking about that hangar. An abandoned maintenance bay meant abandoned tools, maybe abandoned parts, maybe even an abandoned ship or two. At 800 credits, it was worth the risk. He placed his bid. He won. The next morning took a lift down to the lower decks. The lights were dim here. Half of them did not work anymore. The air smelled old and recycled. He passed empty storefronts and sealed doorways. Once, this part of the station had been busy. Now it was a ghost town. He found the hangar at the end of a long corridor. The door was massive, designed for ships to pass through. It was sealed with locks that looked ancient. Pulled out his tools and got to work. It took him 3 hours to cut through. When the door finally opened, stale air rushed out, coughed and waved his flashlight into the darkness. The beam of light showed him a floor covered in dust, workbenches along the walls, old equipment hanging from hooks, normal enough, but the hangar was huge, much bigger than the listing had described. The darkness stretched back farther than his light could reach. Stepped inside. His boots left prints in the dust. Nobody had walked here in a very long time. He moved deeper into the hangar. His flashlight swept across the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Everything was covered in the same gray dust. He was about to turn back when his light caught something that made his heart stop. It was a ship, but not like any ship he had ever seen. The hull was curved and organic, like it had been grown rather than built. The surface shimmered even under the dust, showing colors that seemed to shift and change. Had seen pictures of ships like this in old history files. They were built by a species called the had died out 3,000 years ago. Their ships were supposed to be extinct. Moved closer. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch the hull. It was real. It was actually real. He turned his flashlight further into the hangar. His breath caught in his throat. There were more ships, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They stretched back into the darkness in neat rows like a sleeping army. Saw designs he recognized and designs he had never seen before. He saw sleek racing ships and heavy cargo haulers. He saw tiny one-person craft and vessels big enough to carry armies. Some of them looked brand new. Others looked older than humanity itself. Walked between the rows in a daze. He read the names on the hulls when he could find them. Some were in languages he did not know. Some were in languages that no living species could read anymore. He passed a ship that had to be from the first hegemony, a government that had fallen 1,000 years before humans discovered fire. He passed a prototype racer from the Axis 7 Championships, a ship that historians thought had been destroyed centuries ago. He stopped in front of a massive vessel at the back of the hangar. It was black and angular, covered in strange symbols. Even covered in dust, it looked dangerous. A plaque on the hull read, "Silence of Endings," in 4 different languages. Did not know how long he stood there. Minutes, maybe hours. His mind could not process what he was seeing. This was not miscellaneous salvage. This was a collection. Someone had spent thousands of years gathering the rarest ships in the galaxy and hiding them here. And now they belonged to him. A sound made him spin around. A hologram flickered to life in the air before him. It showed a figure from a species did not recognize. Tall and thin, with too many eyes and limbs that bent the wrong way. But it spoke in perfect English, clear and calm. Ah, finally, a human. The collection has been waiting for a worthy inheritor. Found his voice. Who are you? What is this place? I am Null, a preservation matrix created by the archivists. This is their legacy. 12,000 years of spacecraft history gathered from across the galaxy. The previous owners were inadequate. They sought to sell. They sought to destroy. They did not understand. Understand what? The hologram tilted its head. That some things are beyond price. That some stories must be preserved. The archivists chose their inheritors carefully. Those who saw only money found only death. But you, coal of earth, you are different. How do you know my name? I have been watching you for years. Watching you fix ships that others would throw away. Watching you care for machines that no one else valued. The archivists left instructions for finding the right inheritor. You match every requirement. Looked around at the ships surrounding him. Trillions of credits worth of history, the most valuable collection in the galaxy, and it was his. What am I supposed to do with all this? Null smiled, at least thought it was a smile. First, you must prove yourself worthy. There will be tests, 3 of them. Pass and the collection is yours forever. Fail and everything here will be destroyed. Swallowed hard, and if I refuse? Then the collection destroys itself anyway. You have no choice, Cole. The moment you opened that door, your fate was sealed. The hologram faded, stood alone in the darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of 100 civilizations. He pulled out his grandfather's wrench and held it tight. All right then, he said to the empty air, let's get to work. The news spread faster than expected. He had told no one about the collection. But within 3 days, the whole station knew. Within a week, the whole sector knew. By the end of the month, it seemed like the entire galaxy was talking about the human mechanic who had stumbled onto the greatest treasure in history. Null explained that the collection was worth approximately 2.3 trillion galactic credits. The number was so large that could not really understand it. He had spent his whole life counting credits in hundreds and thousands. Trillions meant nothing to him. But it meant something to others. The first visitors arrived on day 4. A delegation from the Hegemony Acquisitions Bureau, dressed in expensive suits and carrying fancy data tablets. They smiled a lot and used words like cultural preservation and proper stewardship. What they meant was that they wanted to take the collection for themselves. Said no. The next day, a group of merchant princes from Axis 7 arrived. They offered him 50 billion credits and a private moon. They promised him a life of luxury beyond anything he could imagine. All he had to do was sign over the collection. Said no. On day 7, a religious group called the Zealots of the Machine Dawn set up camp outside his repair shop. They believed that machines were sacred, and that was a prophet sent to lead them. They chanted prayers and built shrines out of old engine parts. When tried to explain that he was just a mechanic, they took it as proof of his humility. Also on day 7, someone tried to kill him for the first time. A poisoned dart missed his neck by 2 inches. Station security found the assassin hiding in a ventilation shaft. She refused to say who had sent her. 2 more assassination attempts followed that week. Started sleeping in the hangar, surrounded by the ancient ships. It was the only place he felt safe. Through all of this, Null watched and waited. The hologram appeared every evening to check on and to explain more about the collection's history. The archivists, it said, had been a species devoted to preservation. They believed that knowledge should never be lost. When they realized their civilization was dying, they created Null to protect their greatest achievement, a complete history of spacecraft development across the galaxy. Every ship here tells a story, Null said. Every engine, every hull, every bolt. Together, they form a record of how intelligent life reached for the stars. The archivists considered this more valuable than any weapon or treasure. Then why hide it? Asked. Why not share it with everyone? Because most species are not ready. They see ships as tools, as weapons, as symbols of power. The archivists wanted an inheritor who saw something more, someone who understood that these ships are art. They are history. They are the dreams of 100 civilizations made real. Looked at its hull still shimmering after 3,000 years. He thought about his grandfather, who used to say that every machine had a soul. He had not believed it as a child. But standing here, surrounded by the ghosts of dead empires, he was starting to understand. You said there would be tests, said. 3 of them. What happens if I fail? The collection destroys itself. Built into every ship. The archivists would rather see their legacy reduced to atoms than fall into unworthy hands. And the previous owners, the ones who died. Null was silent for a moment. They failed their tests. The collection protected itself. A chill ran down spine. He was standing in a room full of ships that could kill him if he made a wrong move. When does the first test begin? Now. The lights in the hangar changed. A spotlight appeared on illuminating its curves and colors. The consciousness drive of this vessel has been dormant for 3,000 years, Null said. You must repair it and restore the ship to flight capability. There is one condition. You may only use tools available to humanity in your 21st century. No alien technology, no advanced scanners, no quantum tools. Stared at the ship. This technology was legendary. Scientists from 100 species had spent centuries trying to understand how it worked, and he was supposed to fix it with basic tools. That's impossible, he said. The previous inheritor said the same thing. He died 3 hours into his attempt. Closed his eyes. He thought about his father, working on old fusion engines with nothing but a wrench and a prayer. He thought about his grandmother, who had kept ancient vehicles running long after the corporation said they were obsolete. The Cole family had been fixing impossible things for generations. He opened his eyes. I need a socket wrench, some electrical tape in 3 hours, and I need everyone else to leave. Word of the test spread quickly. 47 alien engineers gathered outside the hangar to watch through viewing windows. They placed bets on how long the human would survive. The shortest bet was 15 minutes. Nobody bet that he would succeed. Ignored them all. He climbed into and began to work. The first hour was the hardest. The ship systems were completely foreign. Nothing was labeled. Nothing made sense, but did not try to understand the alien technology. Instead, he looked for something familiar. He traced power lines and fuel feeds. He found cooling systems and exhaust vents. The details were strange, but the basic logic was the same as any engine he had ever worked on. In the second hour, he found the problem. A connection point in the consciousness drive had corroded over the centuries. The ship's systems were fine, but they could not talk to each other. It was like a brain that had lost the connection to its body. In the third hour, made his repair. He stripped wires with his teeth. He used electrical tape to create new connections. He wedged his grandfather's wrench into a gap to hold 2 components together. It was ugly work. A proper engineer would have been horrified. But when pressed the activation switch, the engines began to hum. Lights flickered to life across the hull. The ship systems came online one by one, waking from their long sleep. Outside the hangar, the alien engineers fell silent. The human had done the impossible. Null appeared beside, something like wonder in its synthetic voice. How did you accomplish this? The greatest minds in the galaxy have tried to repair technology. All of them failed. Wiped grease from his face. He was tired and sore, but he was smiling. Everyone keeps looking at what makes these ships different, he said. But I looked for what makes them the same. I don't care if the engine was built by humans or aliens or gods. Fuel goes in, thrust comes out. The rest is just poetry. The hologram considered this. You have passed the first test, Cole. You have 2 remaining. Patted this hull. The ship seemed to hum in response, grateful to be awake again after so long. Then I better get some rest, he said. Something tells me they won't be easier. Outside the hangar, the watching engineers began to talk among themselves. A human had succeeded where they had failed. A human with basic tools and no advanced training had outsmarted 3,000 years of scientific failure. The word spread across the station, across the sector, across the galaxy. The human mechanic had passed his first test. And the powerful people who wanted his collection were starting to get worried. Had hoped that passing the first test would make things calmer. He was wrong. His success only made the powerful more desperate. If the human could actually keep the collection, they needed to act before it was too late. The Dominion sent their delegation on a warship. This was not normal diplomatic behavior. When they arrived at the station, they did not ask for a meeting. They demanded one. High Commander was tall even for a, with dark scales and eyes like burning coals. He stood in small repair shop and looked around with obvious disgust. 2 armored guards stood behind him, hands on their weapons. You possess the silence of endings, said. His voice was like gravel grinding together. This vessel is sacred to my people. It was stolen from us 7,000 years ago. You will return it. Had dealt with angry customers before, he kept his voice calm. I didn't steal anything. I bought this hangar at a legal auction. Everything inside belongs to me. Human law means nothing. Law is older than your species. The silence of endings is ours. You will surrender it or there will be consequences. Consequences. Smiled, it was not a friendly expression. The Dominion has 15 warships in this sector. Reach has no military presence. Do you understand what I am saying? Understood perfectly. They were threatening to destroy the entire station if he did not give them what they wanted. I need time to think about it, said. You have 1 week. The delegation left, sat alone in his shop, his heart pounding. He had faced assassins and corporations and religious fanatics, but this was different. This was an army. Help came from an unexpected source. A hegemony intelligence officer named Thessaly arrived the next day. She was small for her species, with silver skin and sharp features. Her eyes missed nothing. The hegemony has decided to take an interest in your situation, she said. We cannot allow the Dominion to acquire that collection. The technology alone could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. So you want to protect me. We want to protect our interests. You happen to be included. It was honest, at least, appreciated that. Thessaly stayed on the station, watching and waiting. She claimed to be there for security, but knew she was also spying. The hegemony wanted to know everything about the collection. He did not trust her, but he was grateful not to be alone. As the days passed, something strange happened. Thessaly began to change. She watched work in the hangar, repairing ancient ships with simple tools. She saw how he talked to the vessels as he worked, how he treated each one with respect and care. Why do you bother? She asked one evening. You could sell 1 ship and be rich forever. You could buy protection from anyone. Why stay here and get your hands dirty? Was working on a small scout ship, replacing worn seals in its engine. He did not look up as he answered. My great-grandmother fixed tractors on a farm in Kansas. That's a place on Earth, in case you were wondering. She used to say that every machine has a story. The tractor that helped a family survive a hard winter. The truck that carried a young man to his wedding. Sell the machine, lose the story. He gestured at the ships around them. These vessels have stories too, 12,000 years of them, wars fought, loves lost, children born on long voyages between stars. You can't put a price on that. Thessaly was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. You are very strange, Cole. So I've been told. On the 5th day, Null announced the second test. It was simpler than the first, but in some ways more impossible. Hidden among the collection is one counterfeit vessel, the hologram explained. A perfect replica placed here by the archivists themselves. No scanner can detect it. No analysis can find it. You must identify the fake within 1 week. The alien experts who had gathered on the station went to work immediately. They brought quantum scanners and probability matrices. They ran tests on hull compositions and engine signatures. They compared every ship to historical records. Did something different. He walked among the ships. He ran his hands over their hulls. He sat in their cockpits and listened to their engines idle. He spent hours with each vessel, learning their quirks and imperfections. The experts thought he was wasting time. They whispered that the human had gotten lucky with the first test, but would certainly fail the second. On the 6th day, pointed to an elegant courier vessel near the middle of the collection. It was a beautiful ship, sleek and perfect, without a single flaw. That one, he said, it's the fake. Null confirmed his answer. The experts stared in disbelief. How? One of them demanded. We scanned that vessel 100 times. It is identical to the historical records in every way. That's the problem, said. It's too perfect. Every real ship has imperfections. Little mistakes from the people who built them. A weld that's slightly crooked. A panel that doesn't quite fit. Those imperfections are proof that someone cared enough to build it with their own hands. That courier ship has no imperfections. No quirks. No personality. He shook his head. It has no soul. The watching aliens fell silent. A human had done it again. Not with technology or science, but with something they could not measure or scan. Thessaly found later that evening. She was looking at him differently now, not like a subject to be studied, but like a person to be understood. 2 tests passed, she said. 1 more to go. 1 more, agreed. He was tired. The week had been long, and the threat of the fleet still hung over everything. The Dominion's deadline is tomorrow, Thessaly said. High Commander has made his intentions clear. If you do not surrender the silence of endings, he will attack the station. Can the hegemony help? Reinforcements are 3 days away. We would be on our own. Looked at the ships surrounding him. Hundreds of vessels from across history. The greatest collection ever assembled. And it might all be destroyed because of one fanatic's religious obsession. There has to be another way, he said. Before Thessaly could respond, her communicator buzzed. She listened for a moment and her silver skin went pale. The fleet has changed course. They're not waiting for the deadline. They will reach the station in 6 hours. Felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. 6 hours, no reinforcements, no escape. He looked at its engines still humming from his repairs. He looked at the silence of endings, ancient and deadly. He looked at all the ships that had been sleeping for centuries, waiting for someone to wake them up. An idea began to form in his mind. It was crazy. It was probably suicidal, but it was also the only chance they had. Thessaly, he said slowly, how many pilots do we have on this station? Pilots, maybe a few dozen. Why? Smiled. It was not a calm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just bet everything on one last hand. Because I'm about to wake up the greatest fleet the galaxy has ever seen, and I'm going to need people to fly them. The fleet appeared on long-range scanners 4 hours before arrival, 15 warships in attack formation. Each one was built for conquest. Each one carried enough firepower to reduce reach to rubble. Station security called for immediate evacuation. The civilian population began flooding toward the docking bays, desperate to escape before the attack. Cargo ships and passenger vessels launched in chaos, heading for anywhere that was not here. The station administrator contacted directly. "Surrender he begged. "Give them what they want. The Dominion will spare the station if you comply." "And if I don't?" "Then everyone dies. Is your collection worth that many lives?" Ended the call. He stood in the hangar surrounded by the ancient ships and thought about his answer. The administrator was right. The logical choice was to surrender, give their sacred vessel, save the station, walk away with his life and most of his collection intact. But kept thinking about what Null had said. The previous owners saw only money, only power, only survival, and they had died anyway, judged unworthy by the collection itself. The archivists had spent 12,000 years building something precious. They had trusted to protect it. If he surrendered to the first threat that came along, what did that say about him? He made his decision. Sent a message across every communication channel on the station. His voice echoed through corridors and docking bays, reaching everyone who had not yet fled. "This is Cole. I know you're scared. I know the smart thing to do is run, but I'm asking you to stay. I'm asking you to fight. Behind me are ships that have not flown in centuries. Ships from civilizations that died before humanity existed. Ships that were built by dreamers and warriors and explorers who reach for the stars just like we do. I cannot fly them all. I need pilots. I need mechanics. I need anyone who would rather go down fighting than run away from a bully with a fleet. I can't promise we'll win. I can't promise we'll survive. But I can promise you this. If we go down in the most legendary fleet this galaxy has ever seen. Meet me in Hangar 7734. You have 3 hours to decide." Ended the transmission and waited. For the first hour, nobody came. He worked alone, checking systems on ships that had been sleeping for. Null helped where it could, providing technical specifications and activation codes. But many of the ships were so old that even the AI did not know how to start them. Then the door opened. A young woman walked in, dressed in a pilot's jumpsuit that had seen better days. Her name was, and she flew cargo runs for a mining company. "I heard your message," she said. "I always wanted to fly something that mattered." More came after her. A retired hegemony captain who had been drinking himself to death on the lower decks. A pair of mechanics who refused to let fear make their decisions. A group of refugees who had already lost one home and would not lose another without a fight. By the end of the second hour had 47 volunteers. Not nearly enough, but more than he had expected. Thessaly was among them. She had removed her intelligence insignia and carried a weapon on her hip. "The hegemony didn't authorize this," she said. "I'm acting on my own." "Why?" She looked at the ships around them, at the people checking engines and studying controls, at the impossible hope that had brought them all together. "Because you were right," she said. "Some things are worth more than safety. I'm tired of protecting governments that don't care about anything. I want to protect something that matters." Assigned pilots to ships, he matched personalities to vessels as best he could. The aggressive ones got the warships. The careful ones got the scouts. The dreamers got the ancient explorers that had first reached beyond their home systems. For himself, chose the silence of endings. Thessaly grabbed his arm. "Are you insane? That ship is 7,000 years old. Nobody knows how to fly it." "Nobody knew how to fix the either. I figured it out." "And if you can't figure out this one?" Smiled. "Then I die in the greatest ship ever built. Worse ways to go." The hangar doors opened. Ships that had not seen space in centuries lifted off on ancient engines. They emerged from its reach like ghosts rising from the grave. The led the formation, its consciousness drive singing with light. Behind it came merchant corsairs and diplomatic yachts and racing ships and warships from empires that no longer existed. And at the center of it all, the silence of endings. The prototype that they considered sacred. It was black as night and covered in symbols of death. Sat in the command chair, his hands on controls he did not understand. The ship systems hummed around him, ancient and patient. He felt like he was sitting in the heart of a sleeping giant. The fleet detected them immediately. High Commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "What is this? Where did those ships come from?" "Opened a channel. This is coal of Earth. You came here to take what's mine. I'm giving you one chance to leave." Laughed. "You are one human in a ship you cannot possibly understand. My fleet will crush you like insects." "Maybe, but I've spent my whole life fixing things that shouldn't work. You really want to find out what else I can do?" The opened fire. What followed was chaos. The ancient ships scattered, moving in patterns that confused the Dominion's targeting computers. These vessels did not fight like modern warships. They fought like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking from unexpected angles. Did not know how to use the silence of ending's weapons, so he did what he always did when faced with an unknown machine. He experimented. He pressed buttons and pulled levers and watched what happened. They responded to his touch like a living thing, eager to fight after of waiting. A beam of light lanced out from the ship's bow, cutting through a Dominion cruiser like it was made of paper. Stared in shock. He had not expected that. Around him, the other pilots were learning their ships too. The dance through enemy fire like it knew the shots were coming. The merchant corsairs used their speed to run circles around the heavier warships. Even the oldest vessels in the collection, ships so ancient that their origins were lost to history, performed feats that should have been impossible. High Commander watched his fleet being torn apart by museum pieces. His tactical computers could not identify half the ships he was facing. His weapons seemed to pass through some of them without effect. His crew was panicking. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat." The fleet fled. 15 warships that had come to conquer ran from a collection of ancient relics and volunteer pilots. Slumped in his chair, exhausted and trembling, they had won. Against all odds, against all reason, they had won. Null appeared beside him in the command center of the silence of endings. The hologram was smiling. "The third test," it said. "You have already passed it." Blinked. "What? When did it start?" It was never about skill, Cole. The third test was about worthiness. Would you use the collection for greed, for power, for survival at any cost? Or would you understand that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory is impossible? The hologram gestured at the ships around them, at the volunteers who had risked everything for a cause they believed in. You fought for the stories. You asked others to fight for them too, and they came. Not for money, not for power, but because you showed them that the collection matters. Felt tears forming in his eyes. He was too tired to be embarrassed about them. "The collection is truly yours now," Null said. "No more tests, no more conditions. You have proven yourself worthy." Outside the viewport, the ancient ships floated in formation, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. They had slept for centuries. Now they were awake. And they had a new guardian. A human guardian. A mechanic from Earth who had shown the galaxy that worth was measured in more than credits. 6 months passed after the Battle of Reach. The galaxy had changed, and so had the station. What had once been a forgotten outpost was now the most famous place in known space. Ships arrived daily from every corner of the galaxy. Scientists and historians and engineers came to study the collection. Tourists came to see the vessels that had defeated the fleet. Pilgrims came to touch history. Had not sold a single ship. Instead, he had done something that shocked everyone. He opened the collection to the public. The ancient hangar was transformed into a museum. Walkways were built between the ships so visitors could see them up close. Information displays told the story of each vessel, where it came from, who built it, what it had seen and done. Children pressed their faces against the hulls and dreamed of flying among the stars. Still worked on the ships himself. Every day he could be found in the hangar, checking engines and replacing parts and talking to the vessels like they were old friends. The title that people gave him now, Guardian of the Collection, meant nothing to him. He was still just a mechanic. He still got grease under his fingernails. The political situation had settled into something like peace. The hegemony officially recognized the collection as a protected cultural heritage site. This meant that no government could claim it or take it by force. The collection belonged to, and had made it clear that it would never be used as a weapon. The Dominion was harder to deal with. High Commander had lost his command after his defeat. The new leadership was more cautious, but they still wanted the silence of endings. Surprised everyone by reaching out to them directly. He offered them something they had never expected: access. The Dominion could send priests and scholars to study They could hold religious ceremonies in its presence. They could document its history and share its story with their people. They could not own it, but they could honor it. The Dominion leadership debated for weeks. Many wanted to reject the offer and demand full surrender of the vessel. But wiser voices pointed out that this human had already defeated their fleet once, and his offer was more than any previous owner had ever given them. They accepted. The first pilgrims arrived a month later. They walked through the hangar in silence, tears streaming down their scaled faces. They had thought their sacred vessel was lost forever. Now they could see it again, touch its hull, feel connected to their ancestors. Watched them from a distance. He did not understand their religion, but he understood loss. He understood what it meant to find something you thought was gone. Thessaly stayed on the station. She resigned from hegemony intelligence and became the collection's head of security. When asked why she gave up a promising career, she had a simple answer. I spent 20 years protecting secrets that didn't matter. Now I protect something that does. She and became close, though neither of them was good at talking about feelings. They worked side by side in the hangar, fixing ships and planning expansions, and dealing with the endless stream of visitors. Sometimes they shared meals in the old repair shop that still owned. Sometimes they sat together in the darkness of the hangar, surrounded by the sleeping giants, and talked about the future. The collection continued to grow. Other ship owners, inspired by what had done, began donating their own vessels. A racing champion sent her championship-winning craft, the one she had always planned to sell. An elderly donated a scout ship that had been in his family for generations. A dying merchant gave his cargo hauler with instructions that it should be preserved for his great to see. The museum became more than just the archivist's legacy. It became a shared legacy for the whole galaxy. On a quiet evening, 6 months after the battle, was alone in the hangar. He was performing routine maintenance on checking connections and listening to the hum of its ancient engine. The work was peaceful. It reminded him of simpler times, before trillions of credits and galactic politics and the weight of history. Null appeared beside him. The hologram had become a friend over the months, someone could talk to when he needed advice or just company. "There is something I have not told you," the AI said. "Something the archivists instructed me to keep secret until now." Set down his tools. "What is it?" "There was no randomness in how you found this place. The archivists left instructions. When their civilization fell, the collection should seek out the youngest spacefaring species, the ones still new enough to feel wonder." "Why?" "Because the old races grow tired, they have seen too much, they have lost too many. They look at the stars and see only distance. They look at ships and see only function. The mystery is gone. The joy is gone." Null gestured at the vessels surrounding them. But humans are different. Your species is young. You still remember what it felt like to look up at the sky and dream. You still see magic in machines. You still have the capacity to be amazed. Thought about this. He thought about his grandmother, who had loved her old tractors like family. He thought about his father, who could spend hours just looking at a well-designed engine. He thought about himself, standing in this hangar for the first time, overwhelmed by the beauty of ships he had never imagined. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now you continue what the archivists started. You preserve, you share, you protect. And eventually, when humanity is old enough to grow tired, when the wonder fades and the stars become routine, you find the next young species, and you pass the collection on." That sounds like a very long time. It will be, but the archivists believed that humanity would carry the flame for many generations yet. They believed that your species has something special, something worth preserving in its own right. Looked around the hangar, at the humming contentedly, at the silence of endings dark and patient, at the hundreds of other vessels, each one a piece of history, each one a story waiting to be told. "I'm just a mechanic," he said. "I fix things. I'm not a guardian or a prophet or whatever people keep calling me." "You are exactly what the collection needed," Null replied. "Not a conqueror, not a scholar, not a politician. Just someone who understands that machines have souls. Someone who fixes things because they deserve to be fixed, not because they're worth money." The hologram began to fade. "Take care of them, Cole. They have been waiting a very long time for someone like you." Stood alone in the darkness. Around him, the ships of 100 civilizations gleamed in the starlight. He could hear them breathing in a way, engines idling, systems humming, lives waiting to be lived. He pulled out his grandfather's wrench, 200 years old, worn smooth by countless hands, still working fine. Some things were worth more than money. Some stories were worth keeping alive. And somewhere in the vast machinery of the universe, a small human with grease-stained hands had reminded the galaxy why the stars still mattered. Smiled and got back to work. There were always more ships to fix. There were always more stories to preserve. And he had all the time in the world.